Welcome to Pagan Perspective Subspeak. My name is Tara, and I will be your new Tuesday Subspeak host. This week's question comes from FilthCrow, who asks, what are the best online communities right now? When I used to practice, internet wasn't exactly like it is now, and I never really bothered looking. I've only found a few forums, and they are not very active. I'm just surprised that a solid and active online community forum site isn't more obvious to find. 2. My ultimate goal is to open a ritual tool shop. It will have ritual items from every path. I want to carry pentacles right next to crucifixes, right next to yarmulkes, right next to a deck of tarot, right next to some rosary beads, etc., etc. My question is, what is it that is usually lacking in mystic shops most commonly? My local shop acts as if capitalism belongs in the broom closet and just sort of skirts on the edge of witchcraft items. Why do you think is the most likely cause for this? Am I missing something, or are people just not doing it right? As far as online pagan communities go, I haven't been particularly impressed with a lot of the ones I've signed up on and made profiles on that were made specifically to be pagan communities, but I've been mostly impressed by the sort of spontaneous pagan communities that have sprouted up in other places that are more broad and free. My favorites are YouTube, Tumblr, and then after that, just various personal and group blogs. You mentioned in your question mystic shops, and that's interesting because I've never actually heard of a shop just for mystics. But I think we all know what you mean when you say that. You mean, one of those kinds of shops, one of those pagan, new age, occults, witchcraft supply, Wiccan shops that everyone looks for when they go someplace and want to find those kinds of things. The shop that always has the incense and the tarot cards and the different kinds of crystals. We don't really have one name for those kinds of shops, and yet we always think of them and refer to them as this sort of monolithic thing. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to call that the mythical shop of many names. Now, the problem with this is that the mythical shop of many names doesn't really exist. When we say all of these things in slashes, like, pagan, new age, Wiccan, witchy, we say them as if they all sort of are referring to the same thing, like it's all of those different things are in the same kind of shop. But if you really think about it, a, say, spiritualist shop that dabbles in new age things is going to be very different from, say, an occult bookstore that has some various witchcraft supply. I think when we talk about those kinds of shops, what we're really talking about is a group of different kinds of shops that all fall somewhere in a mix between different spheres that are all connected and overlapping but not necessarily the same. In a New Age shop, you might find a lot of the same kinds of things that you might find in a Wiccan shop, but that doesn't mean that they're the same kind of shop. Usually, when you walk into one of these shops, you can identify one or two main things, or like one of these spheres that they mostly focus on, and they also tend to probably maybe dabble a little bit in some of the other ones. So if you ever walk into a shop and you think, what kind of pagan shop is this? They have hardly any pagan stuff. You might want to ask yourself, are you actually in a pagan shop? Or are you in a different kind of shop that happens to also carry some pagan items? I bring this up because I think this is a mistake that a lot of us make or have made, myself included. And also because you bring up that your local shop only skirts on the edge of witchcraft items and you're wanting to know why. One of my answers to you would be that it's possible that your local shop isn't necessarily intended to be mostly a witchcraft supply shop. Maybe it's another kind of shop and it has some of those items because it either dabbles in those items because that's the extent of their interest, or because people come into that shop expecting there to be witchcraft items and they sell, therefore they have them. So my first answer to the question of why a shop might be skirting only on the edges of witchcraft items is owner intent. You don't know for sure unless you actually ask what the interests of the owner are, or what kind of shop that they actually are wanting to run. And that makes a big difference for what you should actually expect to be in that shop. There are also a lot of other potential answers to this question, There's so many things that could be going on that it's really difficult to answer the question without knowing the interests of the shop owner and knowing, the environment and market of the area. I would say that the second potential explanation for why that might be would have to do with the attitudes, market, and demographics of your area. You mentioned that you feel that your local shop may act as if capitalism belongs in the broom closet, and I assume what you mean by that is more capitalism equals more witchcraft items. Personally, and we might just be using the word capitalism differently, I think that the realities and practicalities of capitalism are probably what is contributing to less witchcraft items being sold. So, kind of the opposite. Shop owners have to keep in mind the market of the area and attitudes of the people in the area they're living in. What brings people in, what repels people, what sells. There probably are some shops out there where the owners tone down the witchcraft items that they're selling so as not to scare other potential customers away. And that's just the realities of capitalism at work and the concern for, what market you actually have, and bringing in as many customers as possible so that you can make as much profit as possible and stay afloat. I know that the interests of the shop owner are not always reflected by the actual things that they have in their shop. For example, I've heard a lot of pagan shop owners talking about how there are certain things in their shop that they sell but absolutely hate, but they keep it around and they keep selling it because it sells and people come in looking for that kind of thing. He also asked what we find is most often lacking in these kind of shops, and I don't know if I can give you a specific item, but I do think I can maybe give you some general advice and things I think are really important in these kinds of shops, if that's helpful. I'm not entirely sure whether you're interested in opening an online shop or an actual physical in-person shop, but I'm going to proceed assuming that you mean the latter. I'm also just going to say pagan shop from now on because it's easier to pick something. Okay. Owning a physical in-person shop these days, you really have to keep in mind that your greatest competition is online shops. And that is a very serious competition because they don't have as much overhead as you do, and a lot of times they're selling the exact same products. And when everyone's selling the exact same products, there's a lot of competition for who can sell it the cheapest. And a lot of times that's going to be an online shop with less overhead, which makes things a little bit more difficult. So you have to think, what is it that actually brings people into pagan shops? And I think one of the key answers to that, at least for pagans going into pagan shops, is some sort of actual face-to-face connection with the pagan community in their local area. A lot of times when we're in a new place, the first thing you do trying to scope out the local pagan scene is you go online, type in, various names for the mythical shops, so many names, and you go visit it. As someone who owns a pagan shop, I think whoever is behind the actual counter is the most public, visible, easily recognizable person who probably has the same interests as the people coming into the shops. Or at least they're going to assume that they do. And I imagine that if you're behind the cash register at a pagan shop, you probably get lots of people walking in, giving you awkward, shy smiles, trying to make some sort of connection with you, maybe trying to start up conversations. And a lot of times this might be someone's first actual open face-to-face encounter with someone from the pagan community. And that's why I think what's most important about pagan shops is be nice to people, just be friendly and patient and open and kind to those people. Because people are coming in looking for some sort of contact with the local community, how friendly you are to them and how positive an experience they have from the people there is going to make a huge difference, even more of a difference than any other kind of random shop, where you're just going to the grocery store and the cash register is rude to you. I don't mean the cash register, I mean, the person behind the cash register, you know what I mean. A lot of the people who work in pagan shops are pretty friendly, but there are also those ones where the people who work there either just ignore people or they seem like they're judging and scoping out everyone who comes in a very snobby and kind of cold way, and we don't want that. My other thoughts and advice about owning a pagan shop. I mentioned before that I find a lot of pagan shops, both online and in person, seem to be selling the same things, and often it's complained that they aren't sold very affordably for people who are on a budget. And if you're looking for variety or more unique things, it's a little bit difficult to do that affordably. I know a lot of older witches, for example, have a lot of these items that they just happened to find in random Goodwills and thought this would be perfect for this and this. And all of their awesomest items tend to be things like that they just got at a yard sale. Which is why I think it would be a really cool idea for a pagan shop to, instead of just selling all of the same things that everyone else sells and you can get cheaper online, if you went to thrift shops and yard sales and garage sales and antique shops and got things donated to you or used things that people don't want anymore, and find things that could serve different ritual purposes or might appeal to people within whatever community they're trying to give items for. And that way the things you're selling are affordable, you can still make a profit off of them, and they're also really unique and keep people coming into your shop because you have things that people online don't have, and you always have new things coming into your shop that you probably won't have tomorrow if somebody buys it. And I think if you did this, you could have a variety of things where if someone's on a budget and they just want something to serve a certain purpose, you have those sort of cheap things. And then you could have things, say, like a really cool item you found at an antique shop that's a little bit more expensive, but also really awesome. I have been in some pagan shops where they do a lot of used books, and I think that's a really good idea. Have people donate things to you, have people give you their used or unwanted stuff. And a lot of places also do, the local handcrafted items, which I think is another good idea. That keeps things unique and interesting and actually worth coming into a shop for. Those are my thoughts on the subject and the advice that I give to you. Do with it as you will, and I hope you have a really good day.